Ngozi was a beautiful young woman who lived in a small village with her family. She loved helping her mother at home and playing with her young siblings. One evening, her parents called her into the living room with a serious faces. "Ngozi," her father said softly, "we found a man for you to marry." Ngozi's heart sank. She wasn't ready for marriage yet. She wanted to finish her work at the village market, help her family, and one day marry someone she truly loved. But before she could speak, her mother interrupted. "He's very rich, Ngozi," her mother added with a hopeful smile. "He can take care of you and the family." "But I don't even know him," Ngozi exclaimed. Her father sighed. "You'll meet him tomorrow. His name is Chief Tua, and he's crippled." Ngozi's eyes widened in shock. A rich crippled man? Why would they want her to marry him? The next day, Ngozi met Chief Tua. He was much older than her and couldn't walk without hope. His legs were thin and weak, but his eyes were kind. He greeted her with a soft smile, but Ngozi felt trapped. Chief Tua's family was wealthy, owning large businesses in the city. Despite his disability, he was respected and powerful. Ngozi's parents were eager for the marriage, hoping it would bring them closer to Tua's fortune. That night, Ngozi couldn't sleep. How could she marry a man she didn't love? A man she didn't choose? She felt walls closing in on her, but she knew that going against her family's wishes would bring trouble. Days passed and the wedding preparations began. Ngozi tried talking to her parents, but they refused to listen. "It is your future, Ngozi," her mother said. "You'll thank us one day." Ngozi cried silently every night. Her dreams of marrying someone she loved and living a simple life were being crushed. Her friends didn't understand why she was so sad. They only saw riches she could soon have. In her heart, Ngozi knew there was nothing she could do. Her family depended on the marriage, and she didn't want to disappoint them. But something deep inside was screaming for freedom. The big day came. Ngozi was dressed in a beautiful gown, but her heart felt heavy. As she stood beside Chief Tua, her hands shook. The village gathered to celebrate, clapping and cheering, but all she could think about was how much she wanted to run. When the vows were exchanged, Ngozi's voice barely came out. "I do," she whispered, her eyes filled with tears. Their wedding feast was grand, with food and music, but Ngozi felt like she was watching someone else's life. She couldn't believe this was really happening to her. After the wedding, Ngozi moved into Chief Tua's grand mansion. It was filled with expensive furniture, large rooms, and servants who did everything for her. But none of that made her happy. Chief Tua was kind to her, always asking if she needed anything. He noticed her sadness and tried to cheer her up with gifts, but Ngozi couldn't smile. She felt like a bird trapped in a gold cage. At night, when everyone was asleep, Ngozi would stand by the window looking out at the stars. "Is this really the life now?" she whispered to herself, feeling more alone than ever. One day, as Ngozi wandered through the mansion's large garden, she met someone unexpected. Tua's young brother, Wugo. He was friendly and easy to talk to, unlike anyone she had met in the house before. Wugo would see how unhappy she was. "You didn't choose this life, did you?" he asked gently. Ngozi shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "I never wanted this." Wugo sighed. "I understand. My brother is a good man, but no one should be forced into something they don't want." For the first time ever since their wedding, Ngozi felt like someone understood her pain. She and Wugo became friends, often meeting in the garden to talk about life. But deep down, Ngozi knew this friendship would lead to trouble. As time passed, Ngozi and Ugo grew closer. He made her laugh, listened to her worries, and gave her hope. But there was a problem: Chief Tiwa. Ngozi felt guilty every time she spoke to Ugo. She was married to his brother after all, but her heart started feeling something strange. Was she falling in love with Ugo? One evening, as they walked through the garden, Ugo stopped and looked at Ngozi. "I care about you." Ngozi's heart raced. She felt the same way, but how could she admit it? It was wrong. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed behind them. Chief Tiwa had seen them. "What are you two doing?" His voice was calm but cold. He sat in his wheelchair, staring at them with a blank expression. Ngozi froze. She felt like the whole world was crashing. What would he do? What would happen next? Chief Tiwa said nothing more that night, but his eyes told a different story. Ngozi couldn't shake off the fear of what he might do next. Ugo too was silent after the encounter, leaving her with a deep sense of guilt. In the mansion, the mood shifted. Tiwa's kindness turned cold, and he withdrew into his study, rarely speaking to Ngozi. She knew she had hurt him, but what would she do? Her feelings for Ugo had grown beyond friendship, and now she was torn between reality to her husband and the stirrings in her heart. Every moment felt like walking on eggshells, and the tension between her and Tiwa only grew thicker. One morning, Chief Tiwa called Ngozi into his study. She entered, her heart pounding with fear of what he would say. "Ngozi," he began softly, "I see you are unhappy. I see the way you look at Ugo." He paused, his voice cracking slightly. "I want you to be free." Amara was stunned. What did he mean? "I know. You didn't marry me out of love." Tiwa continued. "I forced you into this life because of your family. But now, if you wish to leave me, I won't stop you." Ngozi's mind raced. Freedom? Was he really offering her a way out? But could she really leave behind everything, knowing the burden her family would still carry? The offer haunted Ngozi day and night. She had a chance to escape the marriage she never wanted. But what about her parents? They depended on Chief Tiwa's wealth. And then, there is Ugo. If she left Tiwa, would she really be with him? She spent nights pacing the floor, torn between what was right and what her heart longed for. The mansion, once grand and beautiful, now felt like a prison of choices. Ngozi wished someone could tell her what to do, but no one could make this decision for her. Ngozi couldn't keep her feelings bottled up any longer. She found Ugo in the garden, the place where their friendship began, and poured her heart out to him. "Ugo, I don't know what to do. Your brother, he's giving me a chance to live, but I'm scared of what will happen if I go." Ugo looked at her with sad eyes. "Ngozi, I love you," he whispered, "but you have to make this choice yourself. Don't do it for me. Don't do it for anyone else. Do what you want." Ngozi's heart twisted. She had never been asked what she wanted. The weight of everyone's expectation had always rested on her shoulders. But now, for the first time, she realized that her happiness mattered too. That night, Ngozi thought deeply about Ugo's words. What did she want? She dreamed of freedom, of love, of life where she was not forced to sacrifice her happiness for others. But choosing that life would come with consequences. Would she leave Chief Tiwa knowing it would hurt him deeply? Would she turn her back on her family, who had arranged this marriage to secure their future? Ngozi felt her mind pinning with these thoughts, but deep down, she knew what her heart was saying. One evening, as Ngozi sat quietly in her room, Chief Tiwa wheeled himself into the room. His face was tired, and his voice was softer than ever. Ngozi, I won't force you to stay, but before you decide, I need to tell you something important. Ngozi's heart raced. What would he possibly say? I'm not strong as I used to be. Tiwa continued. My health is falling. I don't have much time. Ngozi gasped. She had never imagined that Tiwa was sick. He had always seemed so strong despite his disability. I don't want to trap you in a life you don't want, Tiwa said gently. But if you choose to stay, I'll spend my remaining days trying to make you happy. That's all I ask. Ngozi's heart shattered. How could she live now, knowing that Tiwa's life was slipping away? His confession changed everything. She couldn't just walk away and leave him alone in his final days. But, Ugo, what about the love she felt for him? Her feelings for Tiwa were complicated, and she didn't know if it was love, but it was certainly deep respect and care. Could she give up the possibility of the future with Ugo for the sake of the duty? Ngozi cried herself to sleep, feeling the weight of her decision pressing down on her heart. The next morning, Ngozi made her choice. She went to Chief Tiwa's study and knelt beside him. I won't leave you, Tiwa, she whispered. I'll stay by your side. Tiwa's eyes filled with tears. He reached out and gently took her hand. Thank you, Ngozi, he said. I promise you won't regret this. Ngozi knew that her choice would change her life forever. She had chosen the duty over love, passion over freedom, but something deep inside told her that it was the right thing to do. Ngozi knew that staying with Tiwa meant she had to say goodbye to Ugo. It was the hardest thing she ever had to do. When she met him in the garden for the last time, her heart echoed. I'm staying with your brother, she told him, tears streaming down her face. Ugo's eyes were filled with pain, but he nodded. I understand, he said softly. I'll always love you, Ngozi, but I respect your decision. With that, they shared one final heartbeat hug before parting ways. It was a goodbye filled with love and sadness. And Ngozi knew she would carry Ugo in her heart forever. As days passed, Ngozi threw herself into taking care of Chief Tiwa. He became weaker each passing day, but he always smiled when she was near. Ngozi realized that while she didn't have a romantic love for Tiwa, she cared for him deeply. They shared quiet moments, laughing about old stories and about their lives. It wasn't about love she had dreamed of, but it was real and it brought her peace. Tiwa, for his part, was grateful for every moment with her. He knew she had sacrificed much to stay by his side, but he cherished her even more for it. Chief Tiwa's health continued to deteriorate, and Ngozi stayed by his side every day, making sure he was comfortable. The once lively mansion had become quieter, and the servants whispering as they passed through the halls, aware that their master didn't have much time. Tiwa would sometimes smile weakly at Ngozi, his eyes filled with gratitude. You've given me more than I expected, Ngozi, he whispered one evening as he sat by his bed. You made my final days full of peace. Ngozi's heart inched at his words. She had chose to stay out of duty, but in those moments, she realized just how much she cared for him. It wasn't the passionate love she had dreamed of, but it was deep and it was real. But as she watched him slip away, Ngozi couldn't help but wonder, what would her life be like once he was gone? Would she have to face the pain of losing him alone? One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Tiwa asked Ngozi for a final request. His voice was faint, and Ngozi had to lean close to hear him. "Amara," he said weakly, "promise me something." "Anything," she whispered, holding her hands. "When I'm gone, live your life freely." Tiwa said softly, "I never wanted to trap you in this marriage. You deserve to find happiness. Please, don't spend the rest of your life grieving for me." Tears welled up in Ngozi's eyes. "I promise," she whispered, though her heart felt heavy. Tiwa smiled faintly, his hands trembling as he squeezed hers. "Thank you," he said before closing his eyes. Ngozi stayed with him long after he fell asleep, her heart filled with both sorrow and gratitude. The inevitable day finally came. Chief Tiwa passed away peacefully in his sleep, leaving Ngozi to grieve the man who had been both her husband and her companion in his final days. The mansion filled with mourners, but Ngozi felt alone in her soul. The funeral was grand, with people from all over the village coming to pay their respects. As Ngozi stood by Tiwa's grave, she felt a mix of emotions. She had stayed true to her promise to him, and now, with him gone, she had to face the future alone. But one thought echoed in her mind, the promise she had made to live freely. Could she really find happiness again? After Tiwa's death, Ngozi returned to her family's home in the village. The house felt smaller than she remembered, and the people there treated her differently now that she was a widow of a wealthy man. Her parents welcomed her with open arms, but their joy was triggered with guilt. They knew they had forced her into a life she hadn't chosen, and now they watched her carefully, wondering what her next move would be. Ngozi too felt uncertain. She had no clear path ahead of her, and the future seemed with questions. But for the first time in a long time, she was free to choose her own destiny. One afternoon, as Ngozi walked through the village market, she felt a familiar presence behind her. She turned and saw Wugo standing there, his eyes filled with the same warmth she remembered. "Wugo," she whispered, her heart racing. She hadn't seen him since the day they had said their painful goodbye in the garden. Now standing before him, all the feelings she had tried to bury came rushing back. Wugo smiled softly. "It's been a long time. Ngozi, how are you?" Ngozi didn't know how to answer. She felt a mix of joy, sadness, and confusion all at once. "I'm managing," she finally said. "It's been hard without Tiwa." Wugo's face softened. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said sincerely, "but I'm glad to see you again." There was a pause between them, filled with unspoken words. Ngozi felt her heart pulling in two directions, towards the memory of her late husband and towards the love she had never fully got yet. Seeing Wugo back brought all Ngozi's old feelings rushing back. She had pushed him out of her mind while caring for Tiwa. But now he was gone, the unresolved emotions came flooding back. Wugo too seemed hesitant. He hadn't forgotten Ngozi, but he knew the circumstances were complicated. She was a widow now, her heart was still healing. Over the next few weeks, Wugo and Ngozi met occasionally in the village. Their conversations light but filled with deeper connection. Each time they spoke, Ngozi felt her feelings for him growing stronger again. But the guilt tugged at her heart. Could she really allow herself to fall in love again so soon after Tiwa's death? Ngozi spent many nights lying awake, thinking about Wugo and the promise she had made to Tiwa. She had promised to live freely and to find happiness again. But now the opportunity was in front of her. She wasn't sure if she was ready. Wugo was patient, never pressurizing her, but his presence stirred feelings that were hard to ignore. Every time they met, the connection between them grew stronger, and Ngozi knew that soon she would have to make a decision. But would she truly move on from her past and embrace the new future with Wugo? One evening, Wugo invited Ngozi to walk with him through the village. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the fields, and Ngozi felt a sense of peace as they walked side by side. "I've been thinking a lot about us," Wugo said after a long silence. "I know things are complicated and I don't want to rush you, but I still care about you, Ngozi. I always have." Ngozi's heart raced as she listened to his words. "I care about you too, Wugo," she said softly, "but I'm afraid. I don't know if I'm ready to move on yet." Wugo nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I don't want to pressure you, but just know that I'm here whenever you're ready." Ngozi felt a wave of gratitude for his patience. She knew that Wugo loved her, but she also knew that she needed time to heal and come to terms with her own emotions. Over the next few months, Ngozi focused on healing her heart. She spent time with her family, reconnected with her old friends, and allowed herself to grieve for Tiwa. The process was slow, but each passing day she felt herself growing stronger. Wugo remained a constant presence in her life, always supportive and understanding. His love for her never wavered, but he respected her need for time. Ngozi began to see that love didn't have to be rushed or forced. It could grow slowly in its own time, and she found comfort in that realization. One morning, as Ngozi sat by the river watching the water flow peacefully, she felt a sense of clarity washing over her. She had spent so much time torn between duty and love, between the past and the future, but now she knew what she wanted. She wanted to live her life freely, just as she promised Tiwa, and a part of that freedom meant allowing herself to love again. That evening, Ngozi went to see Wugo. As they stood under the stars, she took his hand and smiled. "I'm ready," she said softly. Wugo's eyes lit up with joy, and he pulled her into a gentle embrace. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, knowing that this was the beginning of their new chapter. Ngozi and Wugo's relationship blossomed in the months that followed. They spent their days together, exploring the village, laughing and sharing their dreams for the future. For the first time in a long time, Ngozi felt truly happy. She knew that Tiwa would have wanted this for her. He had given her the freedom to live her life on her terms, and now she was going to do just that. The love between Ngozi and Wugo was different from what she had experienced before. It was gentle, patient, and filled with understanding. They didn't rush things, but allowed their love to grow naturally day by day. As Ngozi stood in the village square one evening, watching the sunset over the hills, she felt a deep sense of peace. Her journey had been filled with challenges, headache, and difficult decisions, but in the end, she had found her way. She had learned that love wasn't always simple, but it was worth fighting for. She had found strength in herself that she never knew that it existed, and she had discovered the power of choosing her own path. With Wugo by her side, Ngozi knew that the future was bright. She had come full circle, from a young woman forced into a marriage she didn't want to someone who had found love and happiness on her own terms. And the stars began to twinkle in the night sky. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for reaching this far. I always say this because I'm so grateful for you guys to watch these stories to the end. Yeah, and I always want you guys to leave something in the comment section to let me know what you've learned in these stories. But before I say goodbye to my lovely people, if you're here and you've not yet subscribed to this amazing channel, oh my god, kindly subscribe, and you're most welcome. You're most welcome. Kindly subscribe, give a thumb up to this video, and don't forget the notification bell in that you'll be notified whenever I post a video. And for my returning viewer, I thank you so much for always coming back. You put a smile on my face. You always give me the push to do more videos for you guys. So bye bye, see you in my next video. I love you all.